exactly where we were last time, in the same
I
building.
can get in now. They fixed it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Back in the Ministry of Education, and definitely back with more Diego Rivera today. Sometimes I think I should review because they're possibly different people here than last time, but also it helps to get my mind back here as well. And I did want to mention more about these frescoes than, or repeat a point about them than I had said last time. I think it's really quite remarkable that he was given the commission to do these without any oversight of what the subject matter was. That was entirely up to him, because the Minister of Education, Secretary of Education, knew that he was fervent believer in the same purpose as the government official, which was to create a national Mexican identity, because from the time of the Spanish occupation in the beginning of the 16th century, there had been a European colonial overlords, and then Aztec Indians and various tribes. And still I'm aware that, I don't know if for myself as a fact, but throughout Mexico there are such pockets of different indigenous people with different languages that for many Spanish is a second language. So it was to create out of this hodgepodge of people of various backgrounds, various histories, a valid nation. And so he started on the bottom floor in these two courtyards in the ministry. And then you can actually follow how the subjects change, how his thinking changes in what he presents in here. So this is one of those early ones, that one that's Return from the Mines, showing the peasant workers as they leave that extremely unpleasant labor underground all day, that they're being frisked to be sure that they're not trying to smuggle out any precious materials. And it is in these first ones that you have that almost blatant reference to Christianity. And so that the figure, so that you have a Christ-like figure here. And also the one coming up from underground there's a scene in Christian art called the Harrowing of Hell, where Jesus supposedly brings people back up from the dead. And so there'd be a reference there. And for a country that had been converted to Christianity, this would be probably just a sort of an automatic association people made with it. Not that he himself was Christian. These early ones, he's calling on sort of a certain sector of society, but also putting in that message that you suffer in a Christ-like way under this European domination. And when he shows peasants as this woman who'd be obviously an urban type, she's out in the country here. They're Indians here. And I want to show also the way he presents these figures. They're types. I mean, they're not individuals here, but he rounds them. Like the faces are rounded, the shoulders are rounded, the arms are rounded. This is really a characteristic quality of his style. And there's a kind of a very subtle suggestion in something like that, because it's like fullness, amplitude, security, abundance. So there's a slight message goes that way. And now this is one of the somewhat later ones he did, And it's much more pointed and much more caricature. He doesn't caricature the Indians, it's only the white capitalists, as in these two, even the faces that aren't recognizable portraits, especially those women, are just like grotesque, slit-eyed, obese forms. And patient-tolerant farmer behind them, soldier farmer. And then this is quite different. And this is one of the last ones. First of all, you don't see peasants here. He had been to the Soviet Union, so he'd seen the current situation up close and personal. This is just when Stalin is trampling on everyone. And it didn't accord with what certainly Rivera wanted out of communism, and he was a Mexican, part of the Mexican Communist Party. But look, he's not even talking about now. This is about the future. And he's thinking of the future as being somewhat different. Because now, what do you have? Not peasantry, you have all industry in the background. And the part of the song is essentially about, and this is what the future will be. So they've gone from the Christianized past to now we're going to go a communist, mechanical, contemporary 20th century. But also the figures look quite different. And no one has an explanation for why it is he does this. Okay. No, I don't, but I wish I knew where Kira was because we're frozen here. Do you want to look at this for the rest of an hour? I'd like to move on. I do have a little more I can say about this, but let's see if we can get this. Would someone please go to the desk and ask for Kira to come down again? I can make one other point about this while we have it. So last time I had mentioned those three. It's a good thing Kira is coming. I have it. Now, let's see. Maybe I can move it now. Yes. All right. And now, after doing that, I'm going to go back. Oh, no. Thanks.
When the screen comes back on, that man who's in the left with his arm raised, he has a big arm, much wider than the other people in there.
Yeah, and he's the idealized worker of the future. When it shows up again, look quickly at the bottom section where there are the three people that are identifiable. One is Frida Kahlo. Then there's this major photographer, Tina Modotti, who's an ardent communist. And then the artist Siqueiros, those three. And they're in the foreground, and they're handing out arms. So he's making the artists be the leaders. He's using that standard tripart organization. So this is his view. This is his personal point of view, that visual images are going to be what help to transform society. And the two youngsters there at the foreground, he paints those as if they were out in our space. So invited in there, and part of this too is not just a scene we're looking at in the distance. I'm going to be poised to move to the next slide. And then, there. And then this one also looks, it's the collective and then a voting something. But you see, now it looks really mechanistic. Where do you find gone? So even the way he represents it, as well as the subject, has changed. And I don't think to me, it looks like much of an advertisement for what the future should be. Then he next, if I turn this around, I just showed you my screen here. He then got the commission to do frescoes in the National Palace. And he worked on them on and off for some years in the late 20s and into the 30s. And there's just part of the view of the National Palace from the time of the actual revolution, the 1910-1920 revolution, with bodies there. We're doing something interesting here. It flickers in and flickers out.
I'm gonna essentially just plug it back in, but this was doing this to one other program last week, and I think our tech said that this is just might be frayed on the inside, so I don't know.
I could give you the whole talk with if you didn't want to see anything. I wasn't a historian, and I had a professor who said, if you ever want to make a point, don't show it. So this is really living up to what he advised. Well, you know what I'm ultimately going to get to after we look at the national, the ones here in the palace. Have any of you been to the Detroit Institute of Arts? Because we're going to get to some really wonderful, a whole room, a courtyard of frescoes by Rivera.
I'm gonna let facilities know that it was flickering.
Well, here we are back now at the National Palace. For one thing, look at the size of the person going up the stairs so that you see the person relative to the frescoes, which Diego painted on the three sides around the well of the stairs. And it's the whole history of Mexico. Now I'm going to take an excursion, even though time has disappeared, because there's something that, quite apart from dealing with Diego Rivera, that you, I hope, are conscious of now and will be more conscious of. And that's the importance of stairs. In terms of creating mood and importance. There is, you know, how your vantage point changes with each step. You're sort of moving out of the ordinary world, and you are moving up towards something more important. It's worth the effort. Well, think of the capital steps. It's a time-honored way of making a building effectively impressive. And There are many examples where frescoes get involved in these too, but I want to show you just two so that it grapple with what the issue was for Rivera. This is in Würzburg in Germany. It's the bishop's palace from the mid-18th century with the most splendid entrance. And typically, if you're going to go up high, you're not going to have just one flight going up, or even a flight and a stage and then another flight, but it will bifurcate and then come around the room so that you get, again, slightly different viewpoints. Now, here in his palace, the ceiling is done by Tiepolo and his son, because this is just like that space, setting you up for experiences when you go in. And here, this is the realm of Apollo. So you can see tourist groups standing along the side of the stairs looking up. But try to imagine being a person in the 18th century coming up in a diplomatic mission on the way. And this is the realm of Apollo in the heavens. So it makes sense to have a theme that matches going up and looking up at the ceiling. And the ceiling is something that can be seen by everybody if from different vantage points. And I'll only show you one section. This is Tiepolo's version of South America. So this is the European view that, of course, the Mexicans want to obliterate. But so she represents the Amazon, of course. She rides on a crocodile. In the lower right, there are heads. They're going to feast. There's cannibals. So it's just about the barbarity of this culture. Or then I'll take you something that's not really a fresco, but this is the mid-19th century in Amiens in France. This is the municipal palace where an artist whose work is in the Met, Puvis de Chavannes, has, again, about a stair where you go up the center and then you go either side and then you come up. He made his paintings look like frescoes because of the prestige of frescoes, although these are paintings on canvas. But they all have a very muted color because it's trying to imitate the paint being saturated into plaster. And the subjects are lofty. It's work and rest and the classical tradition. And you just take them in bit by bit. Okay, now we get Rivera, who's going to show the whole history of Mexico in that space. How are you going to organize it? Actually, he started it on the left, and then it goes to the right. But it's up to him, the choice of the events and the organization. And I'm deliberately choosing scenes with slides that have labels on them so that you can pick out what the separate episodes are. Because otherwise, how would anybody make sense out of this? And to me, I mean, if you're walking up the stairs, are you going to stop at every step? Crane up, look to see if you can see that, go back down so you can see what's up toward the ceiling? How is this ever to be seen? It's just a challenge. But so it started with the Aztec civilization, and then we, which we have here, then we move around to this. Now think of all of those are life-size figures. How in the world would you pick out anything except the central eagle, which is the Aztec symbol and the symbol of Mexico? So it's not viewing history as something really linear, is it? It's just events tumbling on top of one another. It does move sort of from the left to the right, and I will show you a few details in a moment. this looks like illustration, doesn't it? So carefully represented portraits, or look at the fat friar there, that caricature of this in his brown, 2/3 of the way over to the right.
Do we know how long it took him?
He did it in patches, and he actually went up to the United States and came back and finished some more. So he worked on it on and off for about 5 or 6 years. I just think this is terrible.
Is it terrible?
Yeah, I did.
Why is it terrible?
Because it's not legible. If you want someone to get a point of something, how if they can't pick it out, other than to see that, oh, the Westerners look like despicable people, and some you might, oh, I recognize that person or that person. It's kind of hard to.
It's like a puzzle.
Yeah, it is like a puzzle.
But wouldn't it be okay to just take a piece of it and really look at it?
Yes, you see, that's it. If you take a piece, you can't. Now, is that the typical thing you would do if you're on your way up in the stairs in the National Palace to government offices up above?
No, but you could look at one piece and then just.
On another trip, you take another piece. Yeah, that's how you would have to. So I think I have one more. Oh, yes. Okay. Then we come around here. Now, Karl Marx reigns supreme. But I will show you. Oh, I think we have Frida Kahlo and a little more. See, this is negative social forces.
Maggie, what was the contemporary response to this?
I don't know. I can tell you what our contemporary response is. Exemplary of hard work and personal industry, unpleasantly meticulous rendering, composition as crowded as a subway in a rush hour, some scenes dishonest, portraits for hagiographers. I would say that's much stronger dislike than what I'm expressing. But there's something strangely cold about the faces. And I try to even be sort of like clinical. I can't figure out what it is that's different. What makes it a caricature rather than just a portrait of people? Well, while he was working on this, then this is when some artists and architects in San Francisco and part of the public wanted to get him to come up to do frescoes there. And that's when he did leave this and went up and did the one we looked at last time about the making of a mural about the making of a city. And this is a completely different, and it's contemporary with the other. Just puzzling. So when he was in the States, he's very busy. He did 3 murals in San Francisco and did some portraits for people there. And then he came to New York because they had a retrospective of his mid-career retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art. This is before the Museum of Modern Art is in the building we know now. It was when it was a new museum. And the only artist who'd had one before was Matisse. And so you get some idea of how the Americans also admired him. And he had to create works for that show. And this is the one of the ones he did. It's a portable fresco. So all of these men who are famed for their fresco work, then from time to time will make portable frescoes. they weigh at least 450, 500 pounds per one. So they're just on a piece of wall in a steel frame, and the fresco is just painted on this. And for this, what he did was he based it on a photograph that his good friend sent up to him of a work that he had done elsewhere. And he's just now converted it into fresco. But this is of that Emilio Zapata, who in 1915, he'd done that of. So this is not 2 decades later. That's that evolution. It's a dead hacienda owner at his feet. And of course, all in white. This is pretty blatant too, you know, the hero in white. And I found this, I just thought I had to bring it in so you could see what he was like when he was in Paris, still as a young man painting. I'll show you something else, not by him. He never changed this much. This is Fernand Léger, whom he knew in Paris, because I want to get to a different phase of Rivera's art. That's his not grappling with history or grappling with his dreams for a different political system, but his grappling with machines as an aspect of the 20th century. This is by Fernand Léger, who, I'm going to read something from him too, but his paintings, he takes a kind of cubism and then he sort of passes everything through a kind of a framework of machines. And here's what he said about machines. Oh, he'd fought in World War I, so he'd seen what mechanization did. He said, the contemporary environment is clearly the manufactured and mechanical object. This is slowly subjugating the breasts and curves of women, fruit, and soft landscape. That everything is going to be cylindrical, mechanical. And then here is Rivera. Machinery does not destroy, it creates, providing always that the controlling hand is strong enough to dominate it. The best known architects of our age are finding their aesthetic and functional inspiration in American industrial buildings. That's true, looking at Le Corbusier. Machine design and industrial buildings. That's the genius of the new world. For the industrial material displaced, meaning the United States, I feel the enthusiasm I felt 10 years ago at the time of my return to Mexico with the peasant material. So all that ardor he had for the peasantry, he now transformed into ardor for the machine. And he gets a commission from Edsel Ford to come to Detroit and do something that glorifies modern Detroit, the industry of Detroit. That's Detroit Institute from the exterior. And especially because of the great pride that was held in the Midwest for this particular factory. This is the Ford factory in Dearborn, Michigan. It was the largest factory in the world, and it made a car from the materials to the end, the only factory that did this. So this was the most up-to-date industry. And this is not Rivera, this is Charles Sheeler, who did paintings of the factory, the River Rouge factory, which glorifies it as all precision, straight lines, cylinders, clean, efficient, sleek, nothing in the way. Or he also did, this is Sheeler still, he did photographs. And he said, these are the cathedrals of our age, these factories. or that. This again, Sheeler. So they're looking at factories as aesthetic objects. He is. Leger was. Sheeler and many others. Now here's some photographs inside the factory from the 20s, just to get an idea. The immensity of it. Look how long that line is. Or here's a machinist at work. Early assembly line, conveyor belt. Look at that one in particular. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, I went on a tour of the Ford factory a couple of years ago and the River Rouge plant itself. And it was incredible to see that, of course, everything is electronic now, not everything,
Yeah.
people are doing their parts, but these major cars are just rolling along, and I never realized they put all the inside into where the sunroof is. And then the sunroof is the last thing that goes on. It was incredible to see it. So, I wouldn't call it a cathedral in my sense of what a cathedral is, but I get where he's coming from.
Yeah.
That analogy.
It's awe-inspiring.
Yeah, it did, it was.
And here's another one.
Michigan, if you have time to do that, I mean, it was really worth it.
I'll leave this on for just a moment then while I mention this commission. So while he was still out in San Francisco, getting works ready for this retrospective, doing portraits, all the rest, Edsel Ford gave him, invited him to come to Detroit. They agreed on a price, and again, he had remarkable freedom because he could choose what he showed as long as it was to glorify Detroit. And an arts commission had to agree with it as well. But Ford did not say, as a traditional patron of any kind of fresco artist would be, say, you will do this for me because it's expensive, it takes a lot of people, I want to keep charge. So Diego Rivera goes 1932, and he arrives right after they'd had a terrible strike. That this is already the time of the Depression, but workers marched from downtown Detroit to Dearborn, protesting their not getting wages, and guards at the plant, seeing them come from an overpass, guards shot at them and killed six of the workers. So it was a terrible thing. And that's when Diego Rivera arrives. There's no one allowed to be in the plant. So he has some days to just go around, walk through the plant, and he's doing his thousands of sketches, as he always did, in preparation for these frescoes, which are as ambitious as anything he could do in the range of what it covers. He not only is going to talk about industry here, but it's the source of materials, the four races of mankind, the four areas of the world, life to death. It's all in here. So at the top, these reclining figures, they represent, there's two white, there's Asian and European, two dark skin, that's African and American Indian, on opposite walls. And then there are hands that are raising up the materials from the soil. And if you look toward the left part, there's a fetus sort of there over the arch entryway. We're going to look at this in a moment. There. This is a time when Frida Kahlo had her miscarriage. And there's no doubt that there's some sort of connection here. But this is the child, the womb, the future of, and it's all life, and shown in a placenta, and it shows all his knowledge of biology gets worked into this. And then those two large nudes up above, they are the fertility of the earth. This is all we're getting to industry. Now this one I think is more surprising of all. That's the scale. There he is painting it.
Just go back quick.
So you see the cells even. And then we're going to look much more at the full wall. I think this is the south wall, which is the final assembly of the car. And then there's little panels down below. There are 27 panels in this whole thing altogether, but we're going to be like looking at cross sections of the plant. And then down below, those are scenes from the worker's life that are done in gray, as if those were carved out of stone. And these are some of the preparatory drawings. Do you see he's returned to those smooth, curved contours? It's almost as if this is like a mark of his liking them, the way he slightly idealizes them like that. He visited some pharmaceutical company that had its headquarters in Detroit. It's all industry. It's not just the factory. And so this is the office and secretaries working there and people working in the labs. And there it is in color.
Is this in Detroit or at the airport?
It's the museum's in Detroit.
Museum's in Detroit.
Mm-hmm. But this is, I'm like, this is an organized design. This is an easy to understand design, despite its having every bit as much in it as there was on the stairwell. When you look how far back at all the machines and the recession in there, and people tucked farther back in the distance.
You have such a mathematician's brain to get all those angles.
And he did love machines. Look how lovingly he shows just the details in the foreground of the machinery. When you go, you need to take binoculars. No, you do, to be able to appreciate this all. And this does have a tripartite. Do you see? So he's got some organization there. And it's often remarked, this huge stamping machine on the right looks like an Aztec god, the rain god. That the enormous one that looks like it has a head. So it's a slightly anthropomorphized piece of machine equipment. Now, do you remember the photograph with all those looping, look like black rubber bands in the ceiling? Look at all these looping forms go through here. Now, he never saw any worker in there. The workers were suffering. He doesn't show anything about the difficulty in labor, right? These people work with the same precision, the same mechanical force as the machines themselves, but it's done as if in praise.
Did he work with any assistants?
Yes, I don't know how many he had in this case. Yeah, oh yeah. In the lower section, look how far back he's indicated. If you look at the upper, just above the heads, it's showing how deep, how far back that building goes. And I read that this is all accurate. This is, he combines different parts of the factories, different buildings in the unit there, but the details of all the equipment and all the manufacture are accurate. Heroic, square-jawed, vigorous, and multicultural. And then on the other side, it's producing the carburetors and the transmission. Again, divided into 3. And here, let's see. They're bringing up the wealth of the soil, the mineral wealth. Now, up above this, I'm going to be showing you that top right-hand corner one. And then I'll show you the one on the left. Those 2 panels, that has nothing to do with manufacturing cars. It's, again, part of the chemical industry. So not only does he show the whole range of things, but he shows the good and the bad of them, because this can be using chemistry for the good and chemistry for the ill, because it's going to be vaccine on one side and poison gas on the other. This is the one panel which caused enough of a tumult that Edsel Ford and the Arts Commission had to step in over the public protest. Said, we are going to go ahead and do this, because this is vaccine. It's timely now, considering the conversations. But do you see anything about the composition, the child in the middle, the woman leaning over the man, and the animals in the foreground, an ox, a horse, and sheep? It's a nativity. It's a nativity. So pastors were like, this, I read, I didn't check. So the Mary figure looks like Jean Harlow, and the baby looks like the kidnapped Linda baby. And here, now you're looking at it upside down. These were the preparatory drawings. Here it is. And you can see how he's adjusted it, and how he rationalized those curves, makes them slightly more geometric, less organic though. And then on the other side, and then we'll look at the details down below here. His drawing. I can't even imagine making a drawing that ambitious, you know, that I'm going to indicate this figure going back, and I'm going to have another row of figures going back here.
Did he have any assistants to help him paint?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Could you repeat the question?
Did he have assistants to help him? Yes. This is not one. You would have to have, last time I explained in frescoes, you have to have someone working right alongside you who's just laying the coat of plaster, because you have to paint on wet plaster. And then if you wanted, the scale he's working, he would have people doing sort of the blander areas of just simple color. And then he would come in and do the really descriptive parts. There. See that? They're hauling that trolley. And again, they have that, it's the same, their motions have the same quality of the mechanisms, you know, the idea that's going to be repetitive. And there are certainly a number of portraits in that one. Section up above. It's looking into the fire of hell, isn't it? It's beautiful, though, the way that's reflected on the metal of the machines. How many figures going back down below? All men doing exactly the same job. But there's nothing in here that suggests that that's at all dehumanizing. And these are the drawings. Now, these are for the figures that were up above. They're very unerotic nudes. And then the last thing we look at of his is something we can't see, which is the fresco he did for the Rockefeller Center, for the RCA building. Well, that's the story. I'll tell you why. We'll go in. So this is a marvelous thing that the Rockefellers did. This is in the depths of the Depression. They went ahead with the buildings of this whole new complex to provide work within the city. And one of the great things they were going to do was create work for art and artists too, not just builders. And they asked John D. Rockefeller Jr. asked they asked Rivera to provide a mural that was going to go over the entrance at the lobby. So that's the main thing. And on either side, there was going to be a painting by Matisse and one by Picasso. Now, so Rivera got the prime spot. Picasso never even answered the invitation to do the work because of the wire that was sent to him was addressed to Pierre Picasso. And Matisse was busy with something else. But, as you say, he didn't get to do it either. This is a copy of it. And the title was provided by the architect. And it is lofty. I'll give it to you just. Man at the crossroads, looking with hope and high vision at the choosing of a new and better future. You got that? That was his mandate. And now it's just called Man at the Crossroads. So he was, the Rockefellers were, if you stop to think about this, these are all people of great wealth who are employing someone who's known as being a communist, but this is communism not as Stalinism, but it was just an alternate path for social organization, like socialism. And they were partly confident that capitalism would win out anyway, but this was to show both of those, and that human being in the middle would be able to determine the way things went. And so there, as a worker, there he is in the middle. There's a vast telescope up above. There's a microscope to one side. And these are rays of light and things seen in the rays of light using the telescope and the microscope coming to either side. There are biological forms and celestial forms, which are, if one were a scientist, which I'm not, you could just say, oh, that's this and this and this. And then all the plants of the earth growing up in here. And then two visions of society. There's the rational society and the emotional society. And the rational is on the left and the emotional is on the right. Emotional in the sense of good, is paying attention to the well-being of humanity. But just again, look how incredibly crowded this is. And I have details of it. I'll give you the story about why it's not there now. It was up in progress, and Ben Shahn was one of the people working with him on it. In fact, Ben Shahn was quite active in the history of this. Work was proceeding. there was a lot of publicity for it, and there had been a contract between Rockefeller and Rivera in which Rivera had provided a sketch, and then the contract is, this is what's going to be done by X and X time. And after that approval was signed, it was a firm contract. That's when Rivera added a portrait of Lenin on the right side. And a journalist of a sort of a, popular New York paper got wind of that. And then that said, that's, can't have that, can't have that. Rockefeller, I'm going to read you yet more because I'm myself quite astonished by this. He tried to get Rivera to change. He said, while I was in the #1 building at Rockefeller Center yesterday, viewing the progress of your thrilling mural, I noticed that the most recent portion you've included has a portrait of Lenin. The piece is beautifully painted, but it seems to me that this portrait appearing in this mural might very easily seriously offend a great many people. If it were in a private building, it would be one thing, but this is a mural in a public building, and the situation is therefore quite different. As much as I dislike to do so, I'm afraid we must ask you to substitute the face of someone unknown, some unknown man where Lenin's face now appears. That's a wonderfully tactful letter, isn't it? I mean, how? And you think also, because this is property that he needs to rent out those offices, and you have plenty of people who are not going to want to be in a building that advertises Lenin in it. So what Rivera offered to do instead was add a portrait, maybe of some major American Black hero on the side, on this other side, the rationalist side. So they covered it over, and then Ben Shine sort of furtively took a couple of photographs of it, so we have something from it left at the original. That was taken off the wall because it belonged to the Rockefellers. The contractor also said it was their work of art. They paid for it. And Rivera painted a copy of it. So this is a copy that's in Mexico.
So he refused to cover up the line.
Yeah, he would not change the line.
And where is it in Mexico?
You have to Google. It's in Mexico City, but I don't know which, I don't know which museum. So there he is painting it. And then these two, this is one of those really complex ones again. These two statues, on the left, that's a statue of Jupiter with his thunderbolt, but his arm has been broken off. That he represents superstition. It's the end of superstition. And on the right, that's a statue of Julius Caesar with the head off, the end of authoritarianism. I'm sure you would know that instantly looking at it, right? And of course, there are portraits in here. Manhattan socialites. You see all that science too. Every realm gets in here. And then I don't have a good slide of this, I'm afraid, but there you have Lenin looking fixedly ahead. And one reason probably he was so adamant about preserving this is that he believed in universal communism, not the Stalinist versions. This was like an anti-Stalin image, actually, but it was just Anything was communism, they wanted out. And it's a May Day parade at the top. And I close all of his, just showing two of his paintings to remind you that he was not only a fresco painter, but he turned out many, many paintings. This one's frequently reproduced, just a peasant carrier. This is about the same time as he was doing the San Francisco murals. A portrait of a socialite in the 1940s. All right, now, I have no idea what happens in terms of the time, both for your parking and for Zoom. The next one, I will continue for 10 minutes. If you have to leave, you leave. Almost his exact contemporary, Rothman, who has done a lot of work in the United States. The New School in Manhattan, Dartmouth Library has a great set of his. And here's his sketch from me. And I think today, just show you something by him in the Museum of Modern Art, because I thought this might be familiar to you. It's called Dive Bomber and Tank. It was done in 1940, so late in his career. And he didn't give it the title. The director of the museum did, because he refused to give it a title. But it's one of those portable murals. This is 6 panels, 9 by 3 feet, each one very heavy. And he said, you can assemble these in any order you want to. I'll show you 2 orders. Now, this is done in 1940. He was actually commissioned to come up from Mexico City to do this because the Museum of Modern Art had a show on several centuries of Mexican art, and they asked him to come up. And he painted this in not very many days in public so that people could watch him doing this. Where are the human beings? Where are the caricature of the human beings? Where are the happy human beings? This man could not be more different. Although of the same age as I say of Rivera, he was still in Mexico City during the Mexican Revolution. So he experienced the warfare firsthand, which Rivera never did. And that seems to have been, maybe he had a saturnine character anyway, but that seems throughout his works that war looms very large. So what do you see in here? Well, what do you see? 3 human legs. What else? Chains. And what's being chained? Yeah, 3 faces. 3 faces. And the tail of a bomber. And those are tank treads. And what's over on the left, people talk about it as that looks snake-like. To me, that looks more like a hook. I don't think of that as part of the organic. And this is very good color. He is so anti-war throughout his career, anti-chaos, anti-destruction. That's why you could put this any way together. It's chaos however it goes. And this is a slightly different arrangement that the modern expanded. They did change it once. And here he is painting it. He painted one-handed. Well, many people do because you're right or left-handed, because he'd lost his left hand when he was 21. He was creating fireworks for a celebration of the revolution and injured his hand. And by the time there was medical assistance, gangrene had set in, so they amputated it. So he has his career as a one-handed artist. And I think he's a fabulous painter, just in terms of painting. But that's because I'm thinking of the Western kind of more expressionist tradition. Let's go back here. So one thing then, unlike Rivera, is his having experienced warfare firsthand, and the other, he was fully adult late on in his career before he ever went to Europe. So he is actually a more native Mexican artist. He went to the same good art school that Rivera had. Let's see, maybe. Just show you one of his, yeah?
Isn't it the previous one? To be arranged in different ways, the panels?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an image of it arranged in a different way?
Just 2 ways. I only have 2.
Oh, I see that.
See, the heads are, one head is moved over further to the left in that panel. Moving these, when you consider these are frescoes and they weigh a great deal, is something you just don't do out of whim. So in the same, let's see, well, I guess I'll be, next time I do that. In the same place where Rivera got his start doing murals, that encaustic one he did of creation, with arms outstretched and all the gold and these weird figures on either side. That's where also he's painting in the corridor there. And this is one of the paintings he does. These are 3 soldiers. The middle one is holding his rifle. He's the active soldier. Then you see one who's had his arms amputated in warfare. And then an old man with covering his hands in despair. And now it's not machinery, but it's that same slashing long strokes as if done quickly with violence and vehemence that goes with the kind of pessimism of this is what happens in war. Begin driving. And he had started his career as a political cartoonist. And this is a lithography did this related. Because of course, one of the problems, if you have things on a wall, you can't make more money off them. But if you and more people can't see them. But if you have something in a dissemblable way, then you can. So next time, what did I? Oh yeah, you'll have to see that too. But these are in the new school. So we'll get to those and rest of his career. Okay? Next week, if it goes well.